Yes, it's me, your old pal Mike May, and welcome to the Suburban Hollywood Dudes podcast. Now, I know I did a podcast in the past that I think it was called What the Hell with Mike May. This is the new improved podcast from Mike May, the Suburban Hollywood Dude. And much like last time when I did my last podcast, it was sort of born out of not doing anything. And here we are now, strike going on. A lot of people are not working. I'm one of them. It's a very dichotomous situation with our current strike scenario. And, you have to ask yourself, how did we get here? And I think you have to go way back in terms of, you hear people that have been in the business for a long time say, back in the old days, and a lot of people get pissed off at that. I know the old days. But I started working in this business in 1983. And when I first started, obviously, it was film exclusively. In terms of movie making, I mean, soap operas and sporting events were shot at that point on, tape, videotape and stuff. But I went through my career from starting out in film, and then in 2008, 2009, that's when HD started to come into play in terms of actual filmmaking. And, the bigger thing that I think, people ask me all the time, how has the business changed? I think one of the things that's happened is, in my career, when I first started, there wasn't Video Village. There was very rarely Video Assist. And the advent of Video Assist created Video Village. And Video Village is sort of evolved into, the head office on the set. And as much as I've spent a lot of time at Video Village as a director of photography, it also, I think it built this invisible wall between the crew, what's happening on the set, and, the village, which in many ways is, the bunch of people sitting around gossiping that aren't paying attention to what's happening. And I think it's, there's also that instant review of every shot, which is good and bad, I think. In those older film days, when we shot stuff on film, and we would go to dailies, it was, it was always this really pleasant surprise most of the time, if you were lucky, that what you had shot the day before or a couple days before came out beautiful, because you really didn't know at the time, because it was shot on film, it had to be developed, sent to the lab and the whole thing. And, those were great moments in my early career of being able to sit in dailies, whether it was with my cousin Brad, or different films that I worked on and all that kind of thing. Sometimes it was a pain in the ass, at your lunch break, you had to go watch dailies, or after work, you'd watch dailies, whatever it was. But for the most part, it was an enjoyable experience. But my point is that the whole mindset of the village, as I said, is created this sort of wall between what's happening on the set and the people watching it. And now we've evolved into, you have the Video Village, now you have a DIT tent, now you got the focus pullers on monitors. Everyone's got a monitor, and everybody's kind of in their own little cliquey world, in their own little spot, in their own little world, watching what's happening. And there's a lot of good with that. I spent a lot of time on the DIT tent as a director of photography. But what it's taken from us as sort of technicians is there used to be that sort of cohesive element between everybody. The director of photography would be sitting in his chair however many feet back from wherever the camera was, and the director was right there as well. There was an instant communication between whatever the director wanted, or the director of photography with the actors and the technicians. And it's that part of it's gone away, which is kind of a bummer. There's still a few directors that are right next to camera and stuff. And in fact, I used to do a show called Shark with James Woods, the infamous James Woods. And, say what you want about James Woods, he was a great actor. He was irreverent. He was caustic, but he was very serious about his acting and filmmaking, and he had great camera sense. He could always tell when the camera was on him. He could always tell if maybe if it was something needed to happen. Whether it was doing the particular moment over because it was focus puller missed the shot. He would do it over. He could see out of the corner of his eye. Whether it was me grabbing the focus knob and adjusting it for the focus puller or whatever it may be. And anyway, my point being with Jimmy was any director, there was an edict that came down that any director that came in to direct an episode wasn't allowed to sit at the Village. They had to be on the set with a little mini monitor because he wanted that instant communication between him and the director. He liked being directed. He liked being... he liked that sort of cohesive element of filmmaking that we all grew up with. And, that's probably one of the biggest things about what the good old days were that doesn't exist now. The Video Village thing now has just created a separation of church and state, if you will. And, which politically that's supposed to be a good thing. But anyway, on the set, what drew me into the business was that cohesive element of everybody. Everybody felt like everybody was on the same page and everybody got along. And I'm talking about, growing up in the business and being on the set with my dad on a lot of the stuff he did. And, and when I really became aware of how things were done, I was probably 13 or 14 on location with my dad. And getting to know everybody's contribution on a much more intricate level. But in terms of my career, I always liked that togetherness of everybody. You are the Village. The Village was the camera and everybody around it, and now it's broken up into sort of segmented departments. But it's good and bad. I mean, technology has gotten us to this point. And it's interesting that going back to 2009 or whatever the last writer's strike was, that particular strike was also the advent of high definition cameras into, whether it was episodic or motion pictures. And, that's brought on a whole different dynamic as well. And it also, brought on sort of the endless take. When you were shooting on film, and all my film friends know this, on a 1,000-foot magazine, you had 9 minutes of a take that you would, get out of that particular roll of film at 24 frames. And, you knew, as whether you're a camera operator or whoever, boom guy, anybody that was holding anything heavy for a long period of time, that, after 9 minutes, you were going to cut. And also film was expensive to develop. So there was, there was an element of, we don't want to waste a bunch of film unless you worked on a show where that wasn't an issue where they could just shoot and shoot and shoot. But that being said, high definition cameras has brought in the endless take to where you do the take. And obviously when the scene's over, keep the camera rolling, send everybody back to number one, and let's do it again. And what's happened with that is the physical toll that it's taken on technicians. As a Steadicam operator for over 20 years, I was in scenarios like that. And, there were, situations, okay, run back to number one. Well, I wasn't going to run back to number one because I'm already physically exerting myself for the shot, and I'm saving myself for the shot. I would certainly get back there efficiently to do the shot again, but I'm going to take my time to get ready and do it right, which was very important. But also in the handheld world, although there's a notion that high definition cameras were lighter doing handheld as well as Steadicam, but they're a little bit lighter, but they're not. By the time you finish putting all the accoutrement on the cameras, they're heavy. And especially when you're holding it for, look, I did a show years ago that was all handheld. And I held the camera all day long in between takes and I handed off at certain points, but in the end, it took its toll on me. I have neck issues, I have back issues, and that just comes from repetition. It's like carpal tunnel, but on a little bit of a grander scale when it comes to issues with your neck and your back and stuff like that. Anyway, the point is that the writer's strike in 2008 or 9 or whatever it was brought in the advent of high definition cameras, and it was inevitable that we were going to go there anyway. But it brought on all the other issues of making the village more of a see it now kind of environment, and not just a see it now, but specifically how it's going to look by the time we're done with it now world. And I don't know. I just think it's made a kind of a separation of what was once a very cohesive group, and it is what it is. It's technology. And so here we are now with the writer's strike. And, it took us a long time to get to this place of this particular work stoppage in terms of, that contract that existed in 2009 with sort of the streaming channels just starting, Netflix specifically and stuff. That whole contractual situation was, they rode that for a long time. Netflix and the other streaming channels. Oh, because like a lot of you, I did, streaming shows, and whenever you signed on and you got your deal, it's like, well, we're a streaming show and we can only afford to pay this. And now here we are, and those companies have made billions of dollars, and they were still working under the same contracts, and that includes the writers and the rest of us. Yeah, I made some good money on some of those shows, but there was always that little conversation when you made your deal about, we're a streaming show, we can't afford A, B, or C. So rightfully, we as crew members, deserve to be compensated. And when I say crew members, I mean writers included. And, obviously also, when you used to do network TV, and some shows still do it, you would do, 22 episodes or 18 episodes. And now you're talking about, 6, 8, 10, 12 episodes of a streaming show. And I did mostly TV in my career. And the one thing I liked about TV was when I did do a network show that was a whole season, you'd start in July and you'd go until March or April. And then you had 4 months off. And in that time, you could actually plan something. When you weren't working, I'm going to make a plan to take the family on vacation for a week or two or whatever it was, knowing my show was going to come back in July, and I would, be able to jump back into it. Sometimes I took movies in the middle of that TV hiatus, and that was great too. But that's sort of the thing, is you really can't plan when you work in the movie business. It's like, oh, we're doing this in a couple months. Can you do it? And it's like, I have no idea. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I don't know where I'm going to be. And, it's a very, almost a mercenary type existence in that, like a lot of you out there, the phone could ring anytime, any day, anywhere. And you get a call, hey, we're doing this show in, wherever. We need you there yesterday. We need you on a plane tonight. All right. Yeah, sure. I'm not doing anything. Okay, great. I mean, I remember doing, I did CSI Miami in season 2, and it was a 24 episode year that we did that. And at the very end of that particular season, we had gone to Miami twice. We shot the show in LA, but we went to Miami twice, and then, came back to LA for a week. And then we had to go to New York for the New York crossover episode, which was kind of like the pilot. And then came back to LA, and then we went to Miami, whatever it was. I traveled East Coast and back like 4 times in a month, it seemed like. And we finally finished the season, and I was off for 2 weeks and, picking my kids up from school, back to normal, as it were. And then all of a sudden I got a phone call to go to Hawaii for, 8, 9 months on a TV show there. And, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And, that's the point is getting plucked out of your existence and going off somewhere at the drop of a hat. It's all these things that make the business great, different, unpredictable, and difficult. It's a hard road. it's a hard road. And now I'm one of the older guys, as it were, and I'm thinking about retiring from the simple fact that word on the streets, the strike's going to last a long time. And when it does finally kick back into gear, how long is that going to take? And, I got enough hours, I got enough years, so we'll see. But, I think about my friends that I worked with over the years and all the whether they're actors or crew members or directors or producers, whatever. And, it's been an amazing ride. And, being a kid that grew up in the business, I can look back and go, wow, what a career. I was so fortunate to I think, start out in the film era. And I think if you ask a lot of camera guys, they'll say the same thing, guys from my era, as it were. One of the reasons we missed film was there were certain elements that came with dealing with film. There was the smell of the emulsion, the film itself, touching it, threading the camera when you were a camera assistant, and turning the camera on and actually hearing the purr of, the movement in the camera. It was this specific purr, and every camera had its sort of different, characteristic in terms of the purr. My favorite purr is a Panaflex, of course, like most of us, but just hearing that, and the slight vibration in the camera, it was just something that was the neat thing about being a camera operator is when you turn the camera on, you could feel the motor moving, and it felt like something was happening. You realized that the machine was on, and you were doing the shooting the moment, as it were. And what was cool also is if you had cameras next to each other, the cameras would be in sync, and you'd hear you just get the sense of the other camera. If it was next to you, those 24 frames just purring away. And once we kind of moved over to high definition, I remember a lot of us when we first got into shooting high definition cameras. Sometimes you didn't know if it was on. They didn't have like a big red light that said, recording or something. They do now mostly, but there was times, I don't know, are we rolling? What's going on? But whatever, that's just my little quick observation on it. And, also what was nice with film was if you were setting shots, now everything is so electric. Everywhere you go, you got batteries and cables, and this has to be plugged in, that has to be plugged in. You used to be able to put the camera down with a lens on it, look through it before the camera assistant or whoever could plug in and go, yeah, this is it right here. Yeah, that's great. Okay, great. Plug in, shoot it, great. So, it's just those are my observations on that, and I think a lot of people would agree with that out there. But I worry about where we're at now. It's going to be a hard road to get through these contracts. DGA has their issues, WGA, and I don't know how it's going to work out. I wish I had, some positive words to say about it, but there's not much that can be said. It's going to be it comes down to obviously the corporations, because they're not studios, they're corporations, making those, console, I forgot the word, just giving up. And, look, the notion that's been set out with subscribers and everything else, okay, we raise the rates on subscribers. Well, those companies are making a lot of money, and there's the bottom line group of people behind it that, are forcing the issue to make more money. You realize at a certain point in this business, no matter how much of the art element is involved, it really just comes down to money. It's all about money. Unless you go out and shoot something yourself and do it all yourself. And thankfully, technology now, we can do that. You can write your own script, you can shoot your own little movie, you can edit it on your computer, you can do your own music, your titles, whatever it may be, and proclaim yourself a filmmaker and say, here's my project. It's happening now on TikTok in, 10 seconds. But in terms of long form stuff, it's a money making deal. And if you're lucky, you find you can get in with a group that respects the fact that there is some artistic element involved. And, I know I've covered a lot of ground here on this whole thing, but I never got into the business specifically to make money. I got into it because of the camaraderie and, the art. Obviously, when you start out as a low man on the totem pole in any department, specifically the camera department, you're a camera assistant, you're carrying stuff, you're hitting the slate, you're, pushing carts, whatever it may be. The higher up in the pecking order in the camera department became less about the physicality and more about the art. And that was something that I was attracted to, is to actually compose shots and tell a story with the camera. And, and I really enjoyed doing that. I still enjoy doing it. If I operate a camera and I do a really cool shot, I still get off on it. It's just that there's just a big dichotomy to what the movie business is all about. There's the art part and the money part. And of course, we that are making the art part want to get compensated for the money part. There's this other thing that was going around Facebook I saw where, the writers, nothing would happen without the writers. The story wouldn't happen without the writers. And that's very true. But the movie wouldn't happen without the crew. And it's really not fair to say one is more important than the other, because you can write all day long. If you're not making a movie out of it, it's just words on your computer or on a page somewhere. To make it come to life, you need the artists, you need the crew. If you don't have sound, then you just have, silent pictures. And, certainly that was a successful era of filmmaking, but obviously it's not necessary now. We can obviously record stuff. And my point being is that the sound is just as important to the filmmaking process as the filmmakers are. The grips are just as important. The electricians are just as important. The prop people, the set dressers, the makeup, the hair, the drivers. It takes a village, corny as it sounds. That's the bottom line. And you'd like to think at this stage of the game, people know what it takes to make a movie. They really do. The money people know that it takes all these people. They might not appreciate why it takes all these people, but it does. And if they actually spent time on a set, a long period of time, and maybe, like, the money people should come on the set and actually talk to every department about what they do. And I've worked with a few people like that have, giving them essentially a tour on the set of what everyone does and understanding what they do and understanding all the challenges that comes with each department. And if they really understood that, I think there might be a different take on it. But, when you talk about financing people, they're completely removed from that day in, day out filmmaking aspect. So, there's no easy answer. And all I can say from my experience and the people that I've worked with over the years, I'm grateful for all the people that I've worked with that, crew members, because I know what kind of effort they put out. And, as much as I could easily retire, my dog's crying. Quit crying. I like the camaraderie. I like the camaraderie and I like the process. And I like to work with good people. And when you do that, it's basically something that is very rewarding. So I hope we can get it all figured out. I hope that there's concessions made, which was the word I was looking for a few minutes ago, by the money people. And let's get this thing going. Let's get back to where we were. It would just be great if, and it's interesting after COVID, I think everyone had that feeling of like, oh God, this is essentially COVID part 2, because even though COVID came on sort of like surprisingly, once we got into it, it was like, God, when is this going to end? And the writer's strike, a lot of people were kind of in denial about it. And all of a sudden it's here and we don't know when it's going to end. It's basically COVID part 2. And my worry is that, obviously you want to stand up, support your brothers and sisters and in terms of, not crossing any picket lines, but the economy is really difficult right now. A dozen eggs is like $8. Whatever you buy is expensive. And, there's people that have put stuff up on Facebook that said, oh, you should save for 6 months, throughout your career. Well, that sounds good, but not everyone can do that. Other people have different expenses. There's situations that come up where you have to pay, whatever it may be. So it's kind of it sounds great on paper, but to use that blanket term, not everyone can live by that. And my point being in the end is that I just hope a lot of people don't get hurt by this financially, because that's a hard thing to deal with, especially when you're in the latter part of your career. There's other elements that are sort of in the game now. And the bottom line is there's people that are experienced people that aren't getting the calls they once got for various reasons. And I'd hate to see, you're sort of too young to retire, but you're kind of too old to be in certain circles of work. And combine that with the fact that, the work in Los Angeles is not what it used to be. A lot of work in Atlanta, a lot of work in the Midwest and New Mexico and things like that. Point being is there's production cities that have built up personnel there. And you could say the market's oversaturated with people, but how can you blame them? Production comes to town and they're making movies and they need people, and you get hired on it, you get in the union, and now this is your career. So I just hope that people don't get hurt. That's my bottom line. And it's going to be a rough road, and I just hope everyone stays safe and can fight their way through it. So this is my first podcast that I'm doing live on camera. My plan is to have some guests on, fellow people that I work with, friends and things like that, and we can discuss the biz and other things and talk about their careers, wherever they may be, and hopefully you'll tune in. Hopefully you like this. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe. Mike May, Suburban Hollywood Dude Podcast. Thank you so much. All the best, everybody. Talk to you soon.